Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 1024 podcast. Today we're going to be talking about work, career, balancing that work and home life with your spiritual walk with the Lord. Unfortunately, today we're down a member of the crew. Rusty is having to take some vacation time from the podcast, so we're going to have to dock his pay a little bit. But Drew, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Yeah, we're sad that Rusty's not here. He's having a little car trouble, as it were, as we've all had at one point or a time or another. His wife's car is down in the dirt, so they're having to have one car going around, taking all their kids around, and just going out. So he wasn't able to make it, but I'm good, man. I'm trying to lose all these lbs that I gained from the holidays, man. I feel like I ate way too much.
Drew, I know you're not on Instagram, but you may need to get the app back just to tune into mine and Josh's I'll Say It page, because we did a
Got it
Thanksgiving.
back?
Yeah, we're doing it back. We did a Thanksgiving food draft, and what is your number
Shameless
one?
plug.
What is your number one Thanksgiving food? Yeah, shameless plug. If you're on Instagram, go follow I'll Say It.
Shameless plug. I hear you. Okay, well, my number one favorite is dressing. Okay, but we have to have a conversation first before we get into this because I've heard some people argue with me. Like I had some guy argue with me in the station today when I took leftovers the other day from Thanksgiving that my dressing, what I refer to as dressing, is stuffing, and that's
Hmm.
just completely incorrect. My stuffing is like little, like, okay, I would say stuffing is like that little bits and pieces, like you know what I'm saying, the little like
The
crumbly things
breadcrumbs.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Look, and like a dressing is like in a pan, like you cut it with like a knife or whatever, kind of like brownies, but for like actually substantial food.
Hmm. Well, I'm not as Sarah Kate will tell you, I'm not a Southern food connoisseur. I didn't really grow up eating a whole lot of like Sundays. We went out to eat. We didn't like go home and have Southern home cooking. So I don't really have a dog in the dressing versus stuffing fight. But your camp at dressing, and there's a difference between the two of them.
Yes, 100%. And if you say that my dressing is stuffing, I'm just sorry, you're playing wrong. Like there's just no if and buts about it. Like that's not correct. And if you don't like dressing, I'm sorry. I don't know if we can be friends. I'm
So
for
are
sure
you
in
are
saying
you
that.
also a fan then of stuffing, or are you just a
No,
dressing fan?
well, okay, I'll take that back. I will eat stuffing, but like if there was dressing, for my grandma, who we call Mama, she has always made dressing. She has never made any stuffing. It's always dressing and what she calls like giblet gravy. I don't
Yeah,
know if you know what that is,
yeah, we've got
but
giblet
it's
gravy.
really good. Yeah, so we always put that on our mashed potatoes and our dressing and our turkey, and so we've always just had dressing. But I mean, I will say stuffing's bad. It's not dressing. Like why? What if you could have the other? Why would you choose the inferior one? You know what I'm saying? Why would you do that?
Yeah, why would you willingly choose the substitute? I get you.
Okay, so all right, so that mine's dressing. What is yours, John?
I'm a mac and cheese guy. Mac and cheese, man.
Are
Um,
you kidding me?
yeah,
Okay, I am a 100% supporter of mac and cheese. Anybody who knows me will tell you I love mac and cheese. But you cannot choose as your Thanksgiving. We're talking about like Thanksgiving meal, something that you only get once a year, that you're going to choose mac and cheese, which you could acceptably make any other time of the year. Are you kidding me? Well, okay. See, most of that's all that is acceptable. I'm not saying it's bad to have it. I'm just saying as your Thanksgiving, like this is my top tier of the whatever. I'm just disappointed that you chose mac and cheese. But how was Sarah Kate's house? Did Sarah Kate's family? Did y'all have fun?
yeah, we had a great Thanksgiving, man. We had a really good time. Got to see all the nieces and nephews. Everybody came around, rode the four wheelers, hung out in played in the woods a little bit. We went to her sister's house. They've got like 40 acres, so we just
Oh shoot,
hung
yeah.
around, had a good time,
Okay.
ate lots of food. Sarah Kate did lots of Black Friday
Oh
shopping, so
yeah.
it was
Oh
good.
yeah. As you should. As you should. You have to get the deals. So
Yeah.
here's another question going
How was
on yours.
yeah?
How much land is enough? If we're talking about what would you like to live on? What how many acres or if any acres?
Um, 15
15.
acres with a 2 acre pond.
Oh, heck yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't even include the pond in my thought. I was going to say at least 10. But And if it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
more than 10, it would need to be wooded because I'm not going to
yeah.
sit there
I don't
and
want.
spend a whole day cutting my grass. It's just not going to happen every 2
Yeah, I don't
days.
want. I don't want 20 acres of
No.
field, but I'll take 5 acres of field and 10 acres of woods. Because if I can hunt it, or if I've got a pond, or I can make something happen with it, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I'm at
Okay,
with
I hear you.
everything.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I would
but
take the pond as well. But my Thanksgiving was good. I
yeah,
spent my Thanksgiving at the station. I was at work, as you know. Sometimes when the holidays comes around, we just get picked on them for holidays, and this was my year to work Thanksgiving. So, but I do get Christmas off, so we'll take. I personally will
there you
take
go.
Christmas off over Thanksgiving every single day. I mean, it's my
Did
personal
you
opinion.
you everybody stay safe at the station? Y'all have a lot of calls that day, or how
Yeah,
was it?
no. What we were discussing in our other group chat. We have another group chat with some other friends that we grew up with. They were debating on how many turkey fires that I would get, but actually, I didn't get any. So there you go. Everybody had a
Hey,
good.
no turkey
Yep, everybody
fires.
had a good Thanksgiving. It was great. So there you go.
Hey, shout out the propane burners, keeping everybody safe on
Yep,
Thanksgiving.
shout them out.
Well, Drew, people don't tune in for us to sit here and talk about food and life that much, but it was a good transition because talking about your job, I think at this point most people know what we do for work. But so explain to the people what we're going to be talking about today and how it relates to our walk with the Lord.
Well, we just wanted to talk about. I feel like a lot of people, myself included, definitely, because I went into um, a career, we'll say, of service. You know, I was and still am very proud of what I do, and a lot of people, you know, put their identity into what they do for a living, and I 100% have fallen into that camp before, um, and really, it comes to a point of almost idolatry, and we'll get into that a little bit,
Mm,
because I feel like as soon as you start putting your identity not in the Lord, you know, you're pretty much idolizing something else. You know, like if I was to say like,
yeah,
because you know, people always when I was younger, or when I first started the job, you know, before I kind of try to turn my life around to the Lord, I would always introduce myself as, you know, Drew the firefighter. Like if I was, you know, had to. If you asked me what I was, I would say I'm a firefighter. Like, you know, that's just kind of what
yeah,
I rolled. And like I said, I'm very, very proud of what I do. You know, still am. But you know, really, it should be, you know, I'm Drew Gaddis, a child of God. I'm Drew Gaddis, you know, the Christian. You know what I'm saying? That's what people should be
yeah,
thinking of you when they meet you, and like that's something that should be overarching, that shines through. And you know, again, if you,
yeah,
I feel, at least in my life, in my experience, as soon as I started taking my focus off of the Lord, then I was idolizing my work. And you know, I feel like a lot of people struggle with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think what I've seen with a lot of people I come into contact with is, you know, realistically, in your day, you spend the most time at work. You know, if you work a typical work schedule, and I know that you don't work a typical work schedule, but you're putting in at least 40 hours a week in what you're
Yeah.
doing. Um, you know, very rarely do you have 40 conscious hours of doing anything else. You know, if you're married, like by the time your wife and you both get home from school or from work and before you go to bed, you know, you're probably not going to have 8 hours a day to be able to make that time up. And you've got weekends and stuff that come into play there. But really, I think a lot of why people's work identity becomes so strong is because that's where a vast majority of their time is spent, trying to provide for their family or trying to make a name for themselves. And I don't think any of those things are bad in and of themselves, you know, in a vacuum. But I think that we become so focused on, you know, trying to work hard or trying to earn a certain amount of money or earn a certain status that we neglect other aspects of our life, and it becomes work focused instead of, you know, our lives become work focused instead of our lives being God focused and work being a means of ministry, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
100%. And you know, obviously I don't have any experience being a woman, so I come through it from the man's perspective, and I feel like the the reason that men do it, or at least I have, is because you know there was always an overarching want to be a part of something bigger than myself, you know. And you know, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times when I was younger and wasn't putting too much emphasis on my faith, I was always looking to be a part of something bigger than myself, looking to be, part of a group or a part of, the job or,
Yeah.
what have you, name it, I tried to do it. But we have to remember too, or I have to remember that we're already a part of something bigger. We're part of the family of God. He literally calls us children of God once we accept, Jesus as our Savior. We're children of God. So we're already part of something way bigger than ourselves. And, we need to put our identity in being, that child of God instead of, putting our identity as, name it, the accountant, the lineman, the whatever you're doing, I feel
Yeah.
like,
The physical therapist, the
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
whatever you're doing,
Um, and for me, I think that's been really tricky because like I've worked. I mean, the role I'm in now is a little bit different, but a lot of what I've done in my adult life, even while I was in college, has been ministry related. Whether it's been, I mean, right now I'm the volunteer youth pastor at our church because we don't have one on staff, so I'll include that with my work because it takes up a large portion of my time. But even when working in ministry, man, like you have. Sorry, that was my cat that jumped. You've got to consciously remind yourself, like working in ministry, that's not a substitute for intentional time with your relationship with God. Like me going and being a part of a church as a staff member or as a worker for them, that's good and that's furthering the kingdom if I'm doing my job correctly, but that's not a replacement for my one-on-one time intentionally diving into the word and growing my own faith.
yeah, 100%. And
Um,
that's a great point too, because I really, I guess, haven't even thought of this, but something that y'all should know about me is that growing up, I've always worked in the church until I joined the department, which I'm at now. I'd always, whether it was, intern at the student ministry or working for our athletic ministry, or, even I worked maintenance at our church for a little bit. I was always a part of the church. Like even where I worked, like everything that I did always revolved around being at church. And so, which is a good thing because it always kept me, accountable, and it always kept me around good, godly people. But once I started going into the fire department, it was the first time I'd ever been around a secular group of people for a long, long period of time. And it was really an eye opener because and it was a trap for me because, again, I'd always wanted to be a part of something bigger. And so, I'm a kind of a people pleaser a little bit. I don't like to pretend that I am, but, deep down, I think everybody likes to please the people around them, or, be wanting to be a part of, one of the boys or one of the girls, and so
yeah,
to do that, obviously when you get away from, working in the church, just in a secular environment, things necessarily aren't always centered around the Lord. And so that was a big trap for me. And it was probably definitely one of the reasons that I kind of fell away from the Lord for the period of time that I did. Because again, to be a part of, be accepted, I had to do, I was doing some things that, I definitely should not have been because it was just a secular environment.
right.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah, to appease the masses of the people you work with. And I think that's something that like when I first graduated college, man, the first full-time job I had, I was selling cars. And I worked at a place that had a pretty decent reputation as far as, car lots go. But I worked with a bunch of guys, man, who were just scummy. And that was the first time that I had seen my work environment have to be a ministry because I worked with people who would scam people out of thousands of dollars and be happy about doing it because it meant more money lying in their pockets. And I took fire from some of my bosses because I wasn't willing to scam people. I wasn't willing to push people to spend more money than they had, or I wasn't willing to cut corners. Like I was going to fight for my customers, even if it meant less money in my pocket. And in the world of sales, especially car sales, I mean, that didn't make me a great car salesman, but I wasn't ever going to allow the circumstances or the environment of my work to change who I was at my core. I wasn't going to allow that to dictate my character. Um, and, and that was the first time I'd worked with people who I had just seen be so cruel and so hateful. I mean, I can remember working with people and they would just throw on a random $7,000 worth of extra costs to their customers just because it meant more money for them. And I was like, I can't do that. And so I didn't last too long in car sales, but working in that environment, Drew, like you said, like just that secular world, And I'm not saying that all people who aren't believers are bad influences or you shouldn't be around them, because like Jesus hung around them, and
Yeah.
we can get into that whole thing another time. I'm just saying that as far as work goes, if part of your identity is who you are and what your career is, you have to be very careful about what aspects of that career you allow to influence your character.
100%. And
Um,
I mean that you are a product, of your friends or the people who you hang around, whether friends or not, just the people that you're around most of the time. Generally, it
Absolutely.
creates, you pick up little, just little nuances from them or how you want to, act or whatever. That's how you generally pick them up from the people that you're around. And I mean, obviously it's said a lot, but it is true. And that's why, having a good godly group of people around you, being in community with people is so important, because the fact of the matter is, as we've both learned, most people are not going to be in ministry and not going to be around the church every
Yeah.
single day of their lives. It's obviously a very big blessing to be, but most people don't. And so with that fact, we know that we have to get our good godly influence from somewhere else, usually not around the people at work. Now I've been blessed. Now Rusty works with me, and so that's I spend a lot of time, Rusty and I spend a lot of time together, and that's what it's gone so much to grow me because of the good influence that he's been on my life. But being in community with other people as well, just make sure that they're good godly people, because I'll be the first one to tell that's why I fell off, because of the influences that I had in my life, like I said, drinking, going out and having sex, like taking girls home, like that was that's just kind of like the cool thing to do. And I mean, it's not necessarily just that. I mean, that's just anywhere. If it's not
Yeah.
God centered, that's what you're going to get. And the Lord calls us to be
Yeah.
in community with other people, so we have to make sure that we're choosing our friends correctly. And another thing that I wanted to add on to that is that a pastor that we used to have, you and I both have, Pastor Tom Smiley, he used to say all the time is, don't back up on Jesus. In the boardroom, in the homeroom,
Hmm.
in the classroom, you can't back up on Jesus. And that's 100% the hardest thing to do, I would say, in my life at least. Because again, there's just peer pressure is a real thing. Like
Yeah.
it's real. You can't. But you can't back up on Jesus, because the devil will throw all these things. Hey, this is not so bad. You just do it one time. It's okay. But you can't back up on Jesus. You can't back up on Jesus, no matter where you are. You can't back up on Jesus.
Yeah, and I think that like, it's really easy to say, don't back up on Jesus, as most things are. It's easy to say, harder to
Oh,
do.
one hundred
But I
percent.
think that the tricky thing with it is, in school, especially if you're as a student, you pretty much have room to say whatever you want about your beliefs.
No.
No teacher can get you in trouble for saying, for you praying before your lunch or whatever. Like in public schools here in America, like we're blessed to have that.
Yeah.
But in the workplace, you have to answer to somebody else, and if they don't like your behavior, or they don't like, I mean, you have to an extent, kind of bow to the will of the workplace. And for most people, I think that they probably work in a place where they're not going to be fired for praying or fired for living a Christ-like life, because it probably goes along with the code of conduct for that company. But you may face scrutiny from coworkers, or your supervisors, for not being willing to do certain things, or talk a certain way, or keep up with sort of the cut arounds in the office and stuff like that. Um, and I think that it's just that my first experience in full time work changed my eyes and my perspective around being a Christian in a secular world, because even in college, I could find my group of believers, and the guys that I hung out with, or I was so involved with working in the church, it was it wasn't a big deal. But then working somewhere else, it was like nobody I worked with was a Christian, or they were churchgoers maybe, but they weren't Christians. And so I was just kind of like in my own little world, and that definitely I wasn't grounded enough in my faith during that time, and that definitely kind of set me back, because I just allowed some of that negative influence to get too close to who I was. But I got a question for you, Drew, about all of this.
Right.
do you think that people are, and I guess your experience would come from the fires department, so we'll go with that. But do you think that the people you work with um, are more in, do you think it's easier for you to talk to the people you work with about Jesus and Christianity, or do you think it's easier for you to talk to strangers about Jesus and Christianity?
Oh, it was 100%, I would say, easier for you to start, or for me at least, to talk to strangers because, I mean, like you said, it's um, it's easy when those people don't know you, or easier at least for me, that when
Hmm.
those people don't know you, they don't know you from, Jack and Jill on the street. They don't know who you are. Like you'll part ways more than likely after you get done with your conversation, and may not even see this person again. So really, they have no effect on your life whatsoever. But if somebody at work, the likelihood that you see them, every day, or in my case, every third day, and especially like you said, John, especially when those people have power over you to some extent to do something that could be adverse to either your
Yeah,
career or reputation, or whatever it is that you know in your career, they may have the power to do something bad against you if they don't like what you say. So I would say it's 100% for me easier to talk to strangers. How about you?
yeah. I mean, so my work situation is kind of complex right now. So I work doing animal shows for kids' birthday parties with a Christian company. So that's neat, and that's the majority of my income. But that's not full time at the moment. So I'm also working part time at a breakfast restaurant,
Yeah.
as well as part time at the church. I'm doing a whole bunch. I got my hand in a whole bunch of
Yeah, but
different
that's
pots
cool.
right now.
Let's take
So
a time out. We'll talk about this if you want to talk about John. Like I want to talk about
yeah,
like because one of the struggles that I think that you've gone through, and we've all had different struggles, is that you've had some job issues just trying to find something that you enjoy
yeah,
and you like, and want to be at for a little
yeah,
while.
man.
So why don't you talk about that if you don't mind? Because I'm sure there's some people
Yeah.
that are out
So
there in the same boat as you. I'm sure.
yeah, no doubt. So, quick story just to kind of set everything in perspective. Um, grew up never really knowing what I wanted to do. Um, you know, had thought about doing everything from being a pilot to a veterinarian to firefighter to surgeon to rock climber, like literally anything that would have been cool as a job. I had thought about doing it just because I always wanted something exciting. I knew I didn't want to push papers. That was just never something I wanted to do. Got through high school, never really knew what I wanted to do. Was challenged a lot. What are you going to do? Are you going to go to college? Are you going to join the military? Are you going to do this? And I was like, I'll go to college because it's the comfy route. Went to college. Got this really cool letter from the University of North Georgia that said, "Hey, you can't take any more classes until you declare a major." I was like, "Sweet."
Lovely. Yeah, lovely.
So I declared a major. Ended up majoring in communications with a focus in organizational leadership, which is just fancy words for communicating with people instead of communicating through the media.
Heck yeah.
All because I had taken one class as an elective that was communications, and I was like, this wasn't so bad. So I majored in that. Ended up loving it. Loved what I learned. Taught me how to read people and group dynamics and talk to people. And I've always been an extrovert, so it just was a natural fit, and was kind of figuring out, what I want to do with communications. It's really broad. I can go to a lot of things. At the same time as I was figuring all this out, I started dating my now wife. She's from South Carolina, so knew I was going to be moving up here. And I had grown up in one town in my whole life and had contacts at some of the biggest companies in that city. And so for me, post graduation, if I would have stayed in Gainesville, I probably could have gone to some of those companies and been like, "Hey, do you have any entry level positions?" And probably gotten
Yeah.
hired, not for anything super specific or high paying, but I had an in at
Yeah,
most
sure.
places.
Which helps a lot.
Could have gotten, yeah, absolutely. It's not about what you do; it's who you
Shoot,
know,
yeah, it
right?
is.
So I could have had a lot of opportunities, not for high paying or executive jobs, but entry level jobs. And being up here in South Carolina, I knew nobody except for my wife's family. So man, I took the first job that offered me a paycheck, which was selling cars. Worked lots of hours, lived in my wife's parents upstairs for free. Very grateful for them, but worked lots of hours, made a decent bit of money, but hated it just because of the culture. Um, Ended up quitting there and working in accounting and compliance, which I hate numbers, I hate pushing papers, but I needed out of that toxic work environment. So I was stuck behind a desk doing accounting and compliance stuff.
Mhm.
But it was better because it gave me a more normal work schedule, less hours, and decent pay. It wasn't, it was stable.
Yeah.
Wasn't sales. But the whole time I was working there, I was feeling the call to ministry, which I had toyed with my whole life in high school and college. Was, do I want to be a youth pastor? Do I want to be a missionary? Like, what is the call to ministry? Because I just felt like God had placed that on my life to some extent, but never was 100% sure what that looked like. So then I ended up getting approached by a man from our church, who was like, "Hey, I hear you're unhappy with your job. I've got a position for you in banking." So I left accounting and compliance and went to loan processing in the bank, which was better, but still not
Still
great.
not something that
Was
you
there
really
for
wanted to do.
right, and was still figuring out, do I want to be a full-time youth pastor? Do I want to, go to seminary and get a degree in Christian counseling? What do I want to do? And then, as newlyweds, I go into this meeting with my boss, and he says, "Hey, we're restructuring some things. I just need to let you know this position's not going to exist at the end of May. Find a new job."
Wow.
I
Yeah,
was like,
that's terrible.
Rowdy. So it wasn't even that I was getting laid off or fired, which would have been easier to handle. It was just that the position was dissolving, and we were going our separate ways. Yeah. So newlyweds, living off my wife's paycheck, who's a teacher.
Yeah.
So that was a trust in God
Yeah,
moment.
and
But yeah, that
I'm sure that,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I'm sure that put a huge strain on your marriage too. I mean, I can't imagine
Yeah.
because, just trying to settle down and figure out where you're going to live, and Sarah Kate is about our age too, so she's just getting started on her job as well. So, I mean, it's not like she makes, bukus of money either, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Public high school special education teacher. We had just bought a house at the beginning of February.
Yeah.
Get laid off or don't have a job come the end of May. I was like, shoot, God, like what do you have me up here for? Because I defaulted back to that thing. If I was in Gainesville, I could walk into some of the biggest companies there and have an
Yeah.
in. And, it wouldn't be a dream job, but it'd be a paycheck,
Sure, yeah.
right? I wouldn't be struggling to find work. And so I was like, God, what will you have me do? Like, why have I struggled so hard with finding a job? And it was really tough for me in that moment in time because, Drew, you've alluded to it several times throughout the episodes, but like our good group of guy friends back home, like most of them at this point have gotten settled in, pretty decent jobs, things in their career fields that they've wanted. Like you're in firefighting, one of them's working in ministry. One of them works in landscaping and loves it. One of them is working in accounting and he loves numbers. One of them is a civil engineer. So like these guys have found their careers. They found their spot and they love it. And I've just always kind of been the one who's floated around and done a whole bunch of different things and never felt like I knew exactly where I belonged.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this: if you're listening and you ever want to just like rely solely on God, quit your job.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
But I'll tell you, I felt like the laziest piece of crap because the end of May hit and I went off to go lead camp for a week, unpaid, but it was something I'd committed to and it was something that I had already planned, and I was like, this won't be a bad thing because at least I can't spend money at camp. Like at least I'm not going to be like spending more of the money we don't have. Exactly right. So I went to camp. My wife stayed home and hung out with her folks, but I was there and I just prayed a lot at that camp. I was like, God, just give me direction. Tell me what you want me to do. Like I love working with kids. I love working with youth. I love what I'm getting to do at this camp. Like is there something career here for me? Well, at the same time at that camp, one of my other big roles is handling all the wildlife. So I go down a day before everybody else and take care of all the bugs and the ant mounds and snakes and everything like that. And throughout the course of the camp, I keep all the animals away from everybody.
Yes, John the snake rattler.
That's exactly right. And it just so happened that this year of camp, there were more snakes that came up than in any year prior. So I was busier than ever handling that stuff. And of course, good old Crawfordville, Georgia. Shout out A.H. Stevens.
Yes, sir.
It just so happens that, every time that I removed a snake from, the girls' bathhouse or something, somebody was there filming me removing these snakes. And I didn't think anything of it. I was just having fun playing with snakes in the woods. Like that's just what I love to do.
Yeah, sure.
So I got sent all these videos, and man, I come back from summer camp and immediately dive into our church's VBS. And so I'm helping run that and doing the worship rallies and getting kids hyped up and all this stuff. Um, and, I was just like, God, like, this is what I live for. Working with youth, working with kids, ministry, like, I'm all in. Like, I'm going to find a youth pastor position. And then my boss now, Randy, he came and did his critter program to close out our VBS. And I got to talking with him at the end of VBS and showed him, the videos of me catching snakes and working with students at camp. And he was like, get back with me at the end of summer and I might have something for you. And it wasn't really a very promising thing. It just felt like he was kind of pushing me off because we were talking and he was like, well, like I get approached all the time about people wanting to do what I do. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I worked the rest of the summer, man. I worked construction. And you want to talk about a job that makes you feel like a man, go build decks in 94-degree South Carolina heat.
Oh man, I'm sure. Yeah. It's just something
You'll
that I wouldn't even know how to start doing.
you'll get real hot and sweaty real fast, and you come home
Yeah.
dog tired. So I built decks all summer.
Yeah.
But at the end of the summer, man, I just kind of become content after a lot of prayer and a lot of heartache, and I'll be honest, lots of crying and feeling out of place. But I became content with work, and I was like, God, if I have to work in a Zaxby's drive-through the rest of my life to provide for my family, if that's where you'll have me, then that's what I'll do. Like, if that's
Which
what
I
it's going to
think
take.
is, yeah, which sorry to interrupt. I know that there's more
No,
to the
you're good.
story, but I think that that's 100%. In my experience, I've kind of had a breaking story too, which is what you're kind of alluded to. How the Lord kind of breaks us down to
Yeah.
let us fully realize how much we actually need him. Like,
Yeah.
it's always amazing when I listen to anybody tell, everybody has, I won't say everybody, but I would say most people have a story of hardship in their time when they're
Yeah.
like, man, I just realized how good the Lord is because, he allowed me to go down so low so I
Yeah.
can realize how good he is,
Yeah.
and it's always amazing for me to listen to that. But sorry, John, go ahead
No,
and
dude,
finish your
yeah,
story.
absolutely right, man. Because it was one of those things. I had realized that I was idolizing and worshiping the idea of being in ministry.
Yeah.
I wasn't focused on being in ministry for the sake of furthering the kingdom. I was focused on finding a job in youth ministry because that's what I wanted and that's where I enjoyed being, rather than saying, God, I want to be used as a tool for your sake, so I'm going to
Yes.
work. And so it was a breaking moment, and I was like, God, if all I ever am is a Sunday school teacher and I work in Zaxby's, or I work, not digging Zaxby's, but I work in, drive-throughs or fast food the rest of my life, like, if that's
Yeah,
where you'll
yeah.
have me, that's where I'll be. And it was no sooner had I said those things and really accepted them, not just said them, but really accepted it and was like, you know what, I'm going to go out today and apply at some fast food restaurants and just get a paycheck coming in because I'm tired of working construction. I'm tired of doing this. And Sarah Kate had gone back to school, and over the summer it ended up being really good because I wasn't working. She's a teacher. She wasn't working. We got to spend a ton of time together and refocus our marriage, which was
Which is
beautiful.
awesome. Yeah.
But her going back to school, I was like, all right, I have to have full-time, employment, have to be bringing in a paycheck. The first day of school that Sarah Kate was gone, I messaged Randy on Facebook and I said, hey, we talked earlier in the summer, man. I know this is a long shot. I know you probably didn't even mean any of this, but if you did, I was like, I'm still interested. And he got back with me that night. He's like, 100% still interested. Been praying about this all summer. He's like, you, me, my wife, and your wife, we're going to meet on the border in Greenville, South Carolina on Tuesday. This is like a Thursday. He's like, we're going to meet on Tuesday and we're going to talk about everything. So we
Yeah.
met for dinner. He and I had several phone calls, talked about what it would look like, what the payment would look like, what the future of me as doing Critter Keeper programs would look like. And I just felt a real peace about it. So took that opportunity. Then ended up getting brought on kind of unofficially as the volunteer youth pastor at our church, which was something I was already pretty much doing, but now it's kind of like an understood position, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I've got all this time because nobody has me do programs for them in the middle of the day. So I went and got a part-time job waiting tables at a breakfast restaurant, just to get out of the house and occupy some time and earn some extra money. And that has ended up being a really great ministry for me because none of the people I work with are believers. So that's been really cool. And so
shoot, yeah.
what I'll say, man, is like, I know it's a long-winded story and I know that I was all over the place, but
No,
the
it's a
point
good one.
the point I'm trying to make is like, I learned such a dependence on God by not having a job and not having an identity in who I was. But I also learned a I learned that there is such beauty in that dependence. Like, you know, not that I've ever known poverty or not that I've ever known true hardships, because I'm still super blessed to be, where I'm at. But as a newlywed, not having a job, knowing I've got mortgage payments coming, and seeing all this money going out to pay bills, and seeing, very limited funds in my wife and my bank account, trying to understand, God, why would you have this position taken away from me? Why would you not provide me with something else? All at the same time, I didn't even touch on this. I was in talks to work for Upward Sports. They're headquartered here in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I had worked for Upward, for one of the fastest growing Upward programs in the Southeast at our home church. So I had all this experience they were looking for. I had an in at Upward. I thought it was a shoe-in. Like, it was going to be a great paying job. I had the sales experience they were looking for, and it was kind of, what I had put all my chips in. I had put all my eggs in that basket and was like, this is where God's going to have me. And then they didn't hire me. They chose another candidate. And I was,
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a kick in the gut.
yeah, I was, because literally the email I received is they were like, you had all the experience we were looking for. We ended up going with another candidate who had more sales experience but less Upward experience. And the position they were hiring for was somebody who is responsible for pitching how churches should set up and organize their Upward sports programs within their confines of their ministry. And I was like, that's literally what I did for our church. So you're going to tell me that somebody else knows that better? So that was a kick.
Just had it,
Yeah, that was a kick in the gut, but it was also a moment of humility where God was like, I'm going to use that person just as much as I would have used you. Like, it doesn't matter. I'll use who I want to use where I want to use them. And so that was a good moment of just
humility.
If you ever want to feel like crap, wait until God reveals himself and shows him just how faithful he's been. Because now, dude, I've got the coolest job. I get to work in ministry. I get to go to kids' houses and birthday parties and churches and schools and talk about cool animals and keep all these animals as pets that I always wanted to, but could never justify the cost of. But now that they're making me money, I can, go out and buy a $400 monitor lizard and just kind of like have it in my garage and hang out with it and do all these cool things and get to share the gospel and share the beauty of God's creation with people. And so looking back on where I've come from career-wise and everything and where all of it's headed, I know that I'm super blessed because I've got a job where, I'm not my own boss. Like, I do have somebody that I report to that has set expectations, but for the most part, I set my own schedule and I set, my work parameters and my kind of thing. But my only coworker is my boss, who's a strong believer and pushes me towards Christ. And then animals, and all the animals do is point me back towards Christ and his beauty and promise in creation.
Yeah, man, and it's so awesome that how. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's so awesome how, the Lord will put you where He wants you. I mean, like you said, I mean, it's His plan. It's always going to be His time, and I mean, again, we've touched on this in the past episodes as well. Is that whether it's a marriage, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your work, whether it's a hobby, or anything, name anything. If Jesus is not in the center of it, or if it's not in God's timing or will, it will not come to fruition. And that's something, just that I've had to learn, as well. I mean, just with, in my pursuit of, hopefully a wife one day, that of trying to find one that it has to be God's time and it has to be centered around the Lord. And even in my my search for work, like it has to be, I have to be using it, like you said earlier, as a means of ministry, not necessarily who I am, because again, it's it's really idolatry if it's anything else. Like, I mean, if you're putting yourself anything else, I mean, and the Lord will always, provide for you what you need. Like, even though, like, you went through some hard times, and I'm sure that financially, I'm sure, I mean, you don't have to tell me or whatever that, I'm sure that it was, extremely taxing on, on you and your wife's relationship, financially, anything
Yeah.
you name it. I'm sure it was terribly hard, but it's cool to see how the Lord will put you where He wants you to be, because I don't have necessarily a job search story like that, but like I being a firefighter was not what I wanted to be always. Like I
Right.
would, I mean, this growing up, I thought I was going to be a behavioral analyst is what I thought. I went to college for a few years and I thought that I was going to be what I was.
Work
But
for the FBI, for
doing
the BAU.
yeah, that's what I mean. Seriously, that's what I thought I was going to be. Until a mutual acquaintance of ours showed me what they actually do, because he kind of does the same thing.
Yeah.
What they actually do is not as cool as they make it out to be on TV, which most things never are.
Yeah.
So
No.
I kind of just spun my wheels a little bit, working for maintenance for the church a little bit, and then a friend kind of you know said, "Hey, why don't you try out this firefighting thing?" And now I wouldn't trade it for the world. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's cool how the Lord puts you where He wants you to be. I mean,
Yeah.
again, always in everything, trusting God is the answer. I mean, any problem that you're gonna have, no matter what it is, trusting the Lord
Yeah.
is the answer. This it's
And I'll
pretty
say
simple.
this, man, is like, I realize now like how prideful I was when my wife and I first got married, because like I was I was dead set and determined, man. I was like, man, both my wife and I, like, we've lived on our own before. Like, we've been responsible for our own bills. We both have college degrees. Like, we both are gonna find jobs. Like, we are not gonna be those newlyweds that can't afford to make ends meet. Like, we are not gonna be those newlyweds that have to just eat ramen noodle and peanut butter sandwiches. Like, we are going to make it, and we're gonna be okay. Not that we're gonna be wealthy from day one, but like, we're not gonna have
Sure,
time to
yeah.
find. I was dead set and determined, and man, I was selling cars and I was making good money, and I had us a nice little nest egg, and we rented a place and saved money, and then we bought a house, and I was like, yeah, things are coming up our way. And then I lost my job.
Yeah.
And God had a real quick way of being like,
Hey,
he'll
man.
yeah, he was like, he will grow you through the struggles he puts you through. He will strengthen you and grow you through whatever tests and trials he allows you to walk through. But I do firmly believe that everything that I went through job wise, and everything that I learned, I said it earlier, like, I was idolizing having a position in ministry. I was idolizing the idea of being a youth pastor and being that person that somebody looked up to, and being the fun guy that worked at church. And I wasn't thinking about that as much of a serious job as it is. And
Yeah.
you know,
It
I
was
think
something
for
that you
me,
wanted to be more than
yeah, for my
just for
sake rather
yourself.
than,
Yeah. Yeah,
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 I
yeah.
was like, and I think another thing too is like the family that I'm in with, like, my wife's side of the family. Her oldest sister is married to a senior pastor. Her next oldest sister is married to a middle school pastor. Her brother is a worship pastor. I was the only one who wasn't working in church, and it was like, dude, like, I
Yeah.
feel so unholy compared to my family. I feel,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like, if I'm not working the church, I'm letting my family down. And now it's like I'm still working in a ministry adjacent role, because what I do is a ministry and I work in the church. But
Yeah, shoot, yeah.
that
And I mean,
it's
that's
not
go
it's
ahead.
not for
Sorry.
me. It's
Yeah.
because God has would have me there, and everything that I did as a kid, and growing up, and all the interests that He gave me, and all my experiences have culminated into where I'm at now, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, like that's kind of what we started this podcast for, is because we wanted to show that you don't have to be a paid pastor to have a life of ministry. The Lord
Absolutely.
calls us in our everyday life to be, it's literally called the Great Commission, to go out and make disciples of all the nations. And it doesn't just say pastors go out and make disciples of all the nations. It says
Yeah.
everyone is supposed to do that. Like, we're supposed to have a life of ministry. And that's what, you don't have to be have a doctorate in, you know, theological studies, which, not saying that that's bad. Obviously we need those roles. We need those people to, lead and shepherd the flock. But, you know, you don't have to have that to have a conversation with somebody about what Jesus has done in your life and how he's helped you and what your struggles have been. And because you never know, again, like you never know, somebody might have the same problems that you have been through in the past and will benefit greatly from just hearing your story. Like just telling people your life experience is a ministry in of itself. I've found is, because I mean, like I said, you never know what people are going through, and it's again, it's funny how the Lord puts you exactly where he needs you to be, because you never know if you're talking to that person who is going through what you just went through, like, and hey, the Lord, this is what the Lord's shown me. Like, this is how I got through it. This is how the Lord got me through it. And, hey, buddy, if you do this, like, don't make the same mistakes that I've done. Like, trust the Lord. Like, trust the Lord, I mean, it's just funny to me. It's always funny.
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. You hear it, you say it, you're like, yeah, trust the Lord. The God's got this. But until you have to truly be dependent upon him and realizing just how lost we are without his guidance and without his hand, guiding our way and opening doors for us and creating opportunities where he wants us, you don't understand what trusting the Lord looks like. Like, you're just saying it. And that's where I was before all of this job stuff. I was just like, yeah, it's easy to trust the Lord. And then I had to truly trust him, because if I didn't, bills weren't going to get paid, things weren't going to get done, and so it was crazy, and it's been a crazy ride. But even still, I'm daily reminded that my job on this earth, outside of anything else, is to love and honor God and to make disciples of all nations above everything else. That's what I'm here for.
Yep, and again, this is why that verse in 1 Peter, which is my favorite verse of all time. It's 1 Peter 1:6 is where it starts. It says, "In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you've been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ." Again, it says it right there. The Lord uses those trials to show you how good he is, and again, I mean, you and I both had experiences in that, we really thought we could do it on our own, thought we had it all figured out, until the Lord, shows us, hey bud, you really don't, you're gonna have to trust me in this, or else it's not gonna work.
You've got absolutely nothing figured out.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're running out of time, but it's been good to sit down. And me and John haven't sat down in a while, just me and him. It's like growing up, man. We used to do this all the time. And it's been good to just sit down. We miss Brother Rusty, okay? We're not going to discount Brother Rusty, but it's been good to sit down and with John and everything. Well, and I guess we got the SEC championship this weekend, okay? So, again, prayers up for my household. Dad and I won't be watching this time, but I'm sure he'll be calling me because I'll be at the station. So I'm sure he'll be calling me.
You got to work this time?
Yep, I got to work. So we'll be cheering the dogs on from the station. All right.
Do you get to turn on the TV and watch the game?
If we're not on call, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured.
When the bell rings, we gotta go. But hopefully we'll have a good day. We get to watch the dogs win. That's what we're hoping for.
That's right.
Well, thank y'all again for tuning in for another day of the 1024 podcast. We appreciate you liking and subscribing everywhere that we are. We're on Apple, hopefully Spotify soon. We're trying to get it figured out, and SoundCloud and YouTube. So please go like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. You don't even know. Thank you again for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week. See ya.
Y'all have a good one. Bye.